Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be checking out the blank. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be looking at his story on the Forest Hill Cemetery. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Okay, we're going to start out here on the Wacky, and we've got a two-sentence history here. The Forest Hill Calvary Cemetery was established in 1888. George Kessler served as the landscape architect when the cemetery was established. The cemetery is approximately 160 acres. It is located at 69th Street and Troost Avenue. And if you have not watched one of my wackies before about different areas in Kansas City, this George Kessler, he is credited with a lot of architectural landscaping throughout the city. And forgive me, but I don't remember if I've done a wacky on Mr. Kessler here. I will have to look back, and if I haven't, I definitely will be doing so. Seen a few things in here that do not look familiar to me, such as New Jersey, Missouri, which I've never heard of. And as usual, somebody's got their hand out. Today it just happens to be Wikipedia, as if I'm going to give them money for lies. So there's a few notable people that are buried in Forest Hill Cemetery. We ran into Daniel Boone the Third. There's a few Bartles in here. There's a Bartle Hall downtown. Another prominent Kansas City name. Obviously, another person that we need to check out that is Kansas City related. J.C. Nichols. We've looked at him before. Buck O'Neill. Pretty famous Negro American League baseballer. Let's see, I thought that there was a couple of the Trumans buried in here. His parents, Harry S. Truman's parents, possibly? I'm not seeing it here, but I swear I've read it somewhere. All right, we're going to move on to see what else I can find on this. More than likely, I'm going to wind up, looking at something that AI put together. Okay, it looks like there's a few different alternative sources. So we're going to check out the AI overview. Forest Hill Cemetery's history in Kansas City is tied to its 1854 founding and its role as a final resting place for numerous notable figures, particularly after becoming a memorial for Confederate soldiers from the Battle of Westport. The cemetery was designed by landscape architect George Kessler, who envisioned it as both a burial ground and a botanical garden. It was later combined with Calvary Cemetery and is now known as Forest Hill Calvary Cemetery. So the Wacky told us it was established in 1888, and the AI is telling us that it was founded in 1854. Once again, we have conflicting dates. Founding and early years. Founded in 1854, it was initially a burial ground for enslaved people. So here we are. And if you watched my Boots on the Ground video, the two, or, the third one used to be marvelous, I'm sure. But very extravagant structures in this cemetery. And that's not even including, the other little tombs and mausoleums or markers, etc. that are very well done. But here we are told, you know, it started out as a burial ground for enslaved people. After the 1864 Battle of Westport, many fallen Confederate soldiers were buried in unmarked graves on the battlefield. In 1866, George W. Bryant helped organize and reinterment of these soldiers to a section of Forest Hill Cemetery, which was then referred to as the Forest Hill and Calvary Cemetery. A large Confederate monument was erected in 1902 by the Daughters of the Confederacy to honor the soldiers who fell at Westport. And I do believe that I have that monument on video. It should be in the description of my last boots on the ground. But basically, it's a massive obelisk with a Confederate soldier, the very tippy top of it. I'm gonna have some cuts in this thing. Design and landscape. George Kessler, a famous Kansas City landscape architect known for his work on the Kansas City's parks and boulevards, was the original landscape architect for the cemetery. Sid Hare served as the first superintendent and helped develop its botanical garden concept. Let me ask you guys, I don't really recall, and I've been to this place numerous times, any kind of botanical type gardens anywhere. They had some planters with flowers in them. And here's a few more notable interments. The cemetery is a final resting place for a wide range of figures, including Confederate Colonel Upton Hayes and several Kansas City mayors and other prominent citizens. It is also the final resting place of Truman's family members. That's where I have seen this before. See if it elaborates. Harry S. Truman's parents and maternal grandparents are buried, or let me clarify, are said to have been buried in the Forest Hill Cemetery. Now, guys, and I think some of you know my opinion, it is that cemeteries are a cover up of some sort. What's she doing? All right, we're going to try to figure out if there's any information on the structures that we looked at. Like I mentioned, they claim that this cemetery started out as a burial ground for enslaved peoples. So I find it very curious that, if these assuming that these structures were already pre-existing, that this would be a place, obviously that they were burying their slaves in such a place. I don't know how else to say it, but we find ourselves on the Forest Hill Calvary Cemetery. Got a very interesting logo going on here. I wonder if they'll tell us anything about it. Oh, just a few paragraphs here on his story. Established in 1888, Forest Hill and Calvary Cemetery in Kansas City, Missouri, is located near the University of Missouri and Rockhurst University and the historic battlefield of Westport. It is the combination of the historic Forest Hill Cemetery and Calvary Cemetery. The cemetery is located at 69th Street and Troost Avenue in the heart of Kansas City. Yes, I think that we have established the fact that this cemetery is in Kansas City, Missouri, consisting of approximately 160 acres, which we have previously read. The grounds featured winding tree-lined roads with rolling hills. as every cemetery has, the rolling hills. There are many unique artistic monuments, and the grave markers read as Who's Who of Kansas City history. The cemetery originally had 104 species of domestic and foreign trees. In fact, Theodore Roosevelt, during his last visit to Kansas City before his expiration, remarked that the grounds consisted of the finest collection of trees he had ever seen. George Kessler served as the landscape architect when the cemetery was created. Kessler is renowned in Kansas City for beautifying the city with its cherished boulevards and parks. Then it goes on to give us the same information that we have previously read. And in this, they're actually saying that Mr. Hare, the first superintendent of the cemetery, it was his idea. He saw potential to be not just a resting place for the expired, but a botanical garden for the living. Again, with the botanical gardens. Where are these botanical gardens? Hare would subsequently team with his son Herbert to form Hare and Hare, a landscape design firm who worked closely with J.C. Nichols in the development of Kansas City neighborhoods, such as the Country Club Plaza and Mission Hills. The father and son team would go on to design 54 cemeteries throughout the country and one in Costa Rica. Very interesting, this Hare and Hare here being credited with numerous cemeteries. It's also fascinating how, they jumped right from Mr. the beloved George Kessler, a renowned landscape architect. I mean, which is it? Was it George Kessler that did the work in the Forest Hill Cemetery, or was it Hare and Hare? Quite the business venture, going from the first superintendent of this cemetery to creating or designing 54 others. All right, I'm going to do a few more searches, see if I can come up with some information on these structures. Oh, might be a tough one. And once again, we find ourselves on the HisssStory Missouri Valley Special Collections, Kansas City Public Library Digital HisssStory. And I'm trying to contain myself, but I am just blown away right now. Check out this postcard. This is the more dilapidated structure that we've looked at several times now. But look at this canal over here. Look at the size of this. And I'm pretty sure this is an artist, depiction, but still telling. I mean, and covered with ivy. Interesting in this photo, this whole hillside, you can see my arrow, was what looked like ruins just all along this hill. And in this photo, it is depicted as being grassy. Obviously, several things are different here. Let's read what they have to say. This 1908 postcard shows a section of the south central part of Forest Hill Cemetery in the days when the hearse and other funeral vehicles were horse-drawn. And a brick break. So we are being told here that this structure existed in the days of horse and buggy. The building in the right background was the receiving vault used to keep bodies when the weather was inclement or the ground frozen. And I'm sorry if I didn't pronunciate that word correctly. The Phoenix Granite Building contained 80 catacombs. There were no mechanical devices for digging graves at the time, and the necessary labor was difficult in zero weather. The building stands today, but it is used for miscellaneous storage. The small lake has been filled with earth and landscaped. So they are referring to this water feature as a lake, and they say that it has been filled in and landscaped. Gotta tell you guys, I didn't see a whole lot of landscaping going on in this cemetery, especially compared to others. So I'm not really sure what the Hare and Hare or Mr. George Kessler were paid to do here. Some Kansas Cityans can remember driving to the cemetery on Decoration Day. Apparently, another term for Memorial Day. Why not just say Memorial Day? I don't know. With their carriages filled with containers of flowers and water. Others remember riding on the Marlboro streetcar line, which ran through the grounds on Woodland Avenue. So here we are, guys. Another cemetery with water features. And of course, needed a streetcar as well. The right of way for the line was given to the streetcar company for use as long as it maintained the car line. Today it has reverted to Forest Hill and is part of the cemetery. A shelter house was located at the entrance on Woodland, and a farm pasture bordering the cemetery was filled with daisies. For 25 cents, the farmer permitted persons to pick all that they could carry. The flowers, this is ridiculous. The flowers were then carried into the cemetery and used to decorate graves. The cemetery has been famous throughout the years for its wealth and variety of trees. Originally, there were 104 species of American, European, and Oriental trees. The plantings were started by George Law and Sid J. Hare. Kansas City Times, May 1970. Okay, so they say that George Kessler was the landscape architect, and the plantings were started by George Law and Sid Hare. And I guess this is quoting the Kansas City Times, May 30, 1970. And one more little brick break here. Is that a stupid thing? I don't know. I just made that up. But basically, I'm just wanting to insert a few things as I'm going through and editing. And I wanted to note that we have not been given any date for this structure that we were just reading about. The puppy decided to join us. I've got the furnace turned off currently as to prevent any sort of background noise. But, here we are. We've got 2 seasons now, summer and winter. Usually we get a couple weeks, we don't have to run either heat or air conditioning. But I'd like to know who expired and gave some of these people the rights or right to claim ownership of certain photographs or information. Anyways, gonna see if we can find any more information on the other structures. It's funny. Out of the 3 structures, the first thing that pops up is this one that is in complete disrepair. So there's a little another AI overview here that's got a little bit of information. I'm going to go ahead and read this to you guys. Forest Hill Cemetery's buildings include a historic 1931 Forest Hill Abbey Mausoleum, a Phoenix granite receiving vault, which is what we just looked at. And actually, David Wayne is correct as far as his story is concerned. He referred to it as a morgue, which is basically what this is, and a former streetcar shelter. The cemetery was established in 1888, and its grounds were designed by George Kessler, a notable Kansas City architect. I'll probably cut that out because I've said that 10 times. A Roman Renaissance style mausoleum built in 1931. It was designed to look like an abbey but serves as a mausoleum. It is a prominent landmark within the cemetery. And that is the domed structure that they are referring to. And then the receiving vault, we have gone over that. The shelter house. The shelter house was once located at the entrance on Woodland Avenue, which was used by visitors. So, up here it says it's a streetcar shelter, and then down here they're saying that it was a shelter for people. Overall design, and they go on to talk about George Kessler and Hair and Hair once again. But at least we got a date on the mausoleum, 1931. Zero mention of the marble structure. Interesting. So, we're in the deep dive of the artificial intelligence here. Basically, it's scrambling to dig up whatever information it can find throughout the interwebs. But they talk about both of these structures. Still no mention of the marble building. So the mausoleum, it is designed in the Roman Renaissance style, and its elegant appearance often leads people to mistake it for a chapel, library, or college building. Is that right? Is that the first thing that came to mind when you guys saw this structure? Is that a chapel or a library? Possibly a college building. It goes on to talk about, just giving you guys the rundown here. It was not built for monks or nuns, but as a large, ornate community mausoleum housing burial vaults for families and numerous notable citizens. The building was clearly built to last and remains in remarkably good shape today. And then the receiving vault function. Traditionally, graves were dug by hand, which was nearly impossible during the frozen Midwest winters. The receiving vault was where bodies were temporarily stored until the ground thawed. Current status: the roof of the old receiving vault caved around 2025. So, recent cave-in of that structure. I wish I would have gotten there sooner to see it in its full glory. A few other things that I wanted to mention as far as this postcard is concerned. Not really seeing a bridge over here. There's a pretty obvious ancient looking cooked out bridge right about where this little cluster of whatever is. Maybe there's an arch right here. Not really sure, but this stream or whatever it is or was, I believe it was a canal personally, but it snakes all the way through the cemetery and eventually ends up going underground. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be investigating that further at some point, as long as they don't sick the security squad on me. But other than that, back to the George Kessler and Hair and Hair. What were they really up to? Were they really beautifying and landscaping, or were they on a mission to cover up the old world? Well, I can tell you that, just based on a little bit of research that I have done on various places throughout Kansas City that have an association with Mr. Kessler, there always seems to be a water feature or other old world type magnificence that is removed. And I'm on my second page of the goggles. Oh, look at this. Look who popped up here. Water the tree. Anyways, distraction. And by the way, I'm never going to monetize or ask for money. So if there's ever an advertisement, 100% not my fault. But anyways, I can't even find anything on the third structure in question. I'm going to try DuckDuckGo, and then I'll probably just wrap this up, guys. I am unable to find anything on the third marble-looking structure. Thought I'd look through some images here. Oh, look at this. There's the bridge. Once again, we've got some anomalies here as far as, this little pillar thing being on the opposite side of the road. Maybe there was something there at one time. I don't know, but it's basically looking like these round ones that we see or have seen on either ends of this bridge. Apparently, the artist was looking at this after its cooked out state of being. Here's the Civil Wars monument, and we took a detailed look at that in one of my videos. Wow, look at this. I'm sorry, but you have attempted to access a page that you do not have authorization for. Very bizarre, but look at this. I'm going to try to get a better view of this. Oh, real good. Yeah. Here we are. Yeah, let's check out this tiny image here. Unbelievable. Looks like it has its original door or gate. Look at this. The whole front of this is paved like a sidewalk. Crazy. Quite a bit of vines going on here. I mean, they give us these images of things. The first postcard that we looked at was in 1909, I believe. And according to their narrative, these things aren't that old, but yet we are seeing images of them in a dilapidated state every single time. So, what is the deal? I wish this was a better quality image. Oh, shit. What an idiot I am. Sorry, guys. Me not know how to technology. Not seeing any trees growing on top. And actually, I'm not even sure if this is a photograph or another artist depiction. This one's hard to tell because of the quality, but I keep referring to these as photos, and I apologize for that, but most of them that we have looked at are not actual photographs. And for the final image here, I wanted to show you guys this. Looks like before the collapse. Alright, I think that's going to do it, guys. I do plan on looking into a few characters that we ran into while looking through the information on Forest Hill. But also, I do plan on hopefully, we're supposed to get rain again tomorrow, but I want to get back on the bike. The dog and I did a little recon this morning, and there's a few things that I want to check out. They're not exactly around the corner, neither was the cemetery, but it's doable. And I think the bike, gets me in some places I otherwise couldn't get to efficiently. But hopefully tomorrow, if not that, maybe Sunday, but hopefully get my boots or my bike back on the ground. I appreciate everybody's time and thank you for watching.